wealth. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship tell us about updates on what is being done to attract more Francophone immigrants to Canada? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for Sudbury for her question. I'm very proud to announce today that our government has reached its target, 4.4% Francophone immigration outside Quebec. In 2022, we welcomed 16,300 new arrivals, Francophone arrivals outside Quebec. That's an increase of 450% since we've been in power, Mr. Speaker, and that's just the beginning. There's still a great deal to do to promote French in Canada, and we will do that work. Thank you.
For Yellowhead.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal Prime Minister, Jan, a small business owner in Entwistle, is struggling under the oppressive carbon tax. With the cost of food, heating, and fuel skyrocketing, it's becoming harder for Jan and countless Canadians across the country to make ends meet. Conservatives will continue to keep the heat on and fight this tax to help all Canadians like Jan. Mr. Speaker, when will this government axe the carbon tax?
Great question. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, the price on pollution that our government introduced, or if the Conservatives prefer to call it a carbon tax, I'm happy to do so. It is actually a market-based mechanism. It's a capitalism-based mechanism that all experts agree is the most effective at fighting climate change. Mr. Speaker, even the Conservative Party temporarily campaigned on a price on pollution. Mr. Speaker, I think we can all agree that this is the most effective way to fight climate change, and that Canadians are asking us to fight climate change in order to protect our planet for the future and for our children.
The Honourable Member for King Vaughan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 8 years of this Prime Minister, Canadians can no longer afford to eat, heat, or house themselves. The situation is about to get worse. With the tripling of the carbon tax, seniors must choose between eating and heating. Conservatives will fight to turn the tax off so seniors can keep the heat on. So I ask this Prime Minister, will he show compassion and remove the carbon tax?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Seniors.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Honourable Member for the question. After 7 years and 3 months, we have been able to make significant progress for seniors. But don't take my word for it, Mr. Speaker. Take that member's word for it. The Conservative member from King Vaughan just last week was highlighting the other day at committee how poverty rates have dramatically decreased since we formed government in 2015. When we came into government, we made a decision to invest in seniors. We immediately reinstated the age of retirement back to 65. Mr. Speaker, that member would have had seniors work 2 full years to get the benefits that they paid for decades.
That's right. The Honourable Member for King Vaughan.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if he had listened to the whole entire question, he would have answered it properly. They cut out the part where I asked, how much did CERB impact that figure? That's what Stats Canada asked. Sheila, a senior from Midland, would like to know why this government refuses to answer questions. Seniors demand accountability from the Liberal government. They are all talk and no action. Will this Prime Minister understand the benefit that seniors have brought to this country, show some compassion, let the Conservatives come and fix what they've broken?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, every day the Conservatives stand up and pretend to care about seniors. Day in, day out, month in, month out, year in, year out since 2015, they've stood to vote against everything that we've done for seniors in this country for 7 years, 3 months. You can't stand up every year and vote against the things that we do for seniors and then pretend to care about seniors. I'll tell you, Canadian seniors know a whole lot better.
The Honourable Member for Bonavista, Buren, Trinity.
Mr. Speaker, tax season is coming. Year after year, millions of Canadians file their tax returns. And in doing so, they gain access to multiple benefits that make a real difference in their lives. Could the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Revenue tell us more about the importance, but also the advantages of filing our tax returns in time.
Honorable Parliamentary Secretary.
First of all, let me commend the member who brings to this House 29 years of experience as an educator in this community. Years of experience as a mayor, and most recently co-chair of the Seniors Caucus on this side of the aisle. He is right. On the 20th of this month, Canadians can begin filing their taxes. It's absolutely essential to do so to get access to vital benefits, including the Canada Child Benefit, the Canada Dental Benefit, and the Canada Workers Benefit, among many other examples. Mr. Speaker, they have until May 1st to do so. It's vital to the social safety net, but it's vital to Canadian individuals and families too. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Vancouver East.
New Democrats pushed the Liberals to deliver a one-time $500 housing benefit to low-income renters. But now the Liberals are saying people on income assistance or disability assistance whose rent is paid directly to landlords are not eligible. They're amongst the most vulnerable in our community, and we're in the middle of a housing crisis, and families are struggling to afford to put food with the rising cost of living. They need this help now. Will the Liberals stop penalizing people on income assistance or disability assistance and withdraw this discriminatory requirement?
L'honorable Secrétaire parlementaire.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for all her hard work on housing, as well as the $500 top-up. The eligibility criteria that we all adopted, not the Conservatives, of course, last October, have not changed, and I will be very pleased to continue working with my colleague to ensure that this money goes to the most vulnerable.
For Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this week I met with Syrian community members in Waterloo Region who are reeling from the loss of loved ones in last week's earthquake. Those who survived this disaster are without access to hospitals, medicine, food, heating, electricity, or clean water. Syrian and Turkish Canadians are desperate to bring their loved ones to safety, but they need Canada's help today. They're calling on the government to expedite existing immigration files and to make it easier to sponsor their family members. When will the Minister of Immigration make this happen?
The Honourable Minister of International Development.
Speaker, I want to thank the member for this question, and our hearts go out to all the people and families who are affected by this horrible earthquake that's taken place in Turkey and in Syria. I've actually been in touch with many Canadian NGOs who are actually either working in Syria or trying to get support into Syria. Our government has already pledged a matching fund and an additional $10 million, and I can assure the member that our government will be doing more. Thank you.
And that's all the time we have for question period today. And I believe we have a few points of order, so I'm going to work them this way.
You can't make this stuff up, guys. You can't make this as they cut the feed, right? Sorry, I wasn't even around my computer. I'm listening to it on my phone, and then I'm like, oh, this just happened. As they cut, there's a couple points of order here. Yada, yada, yada. If it's still on your TV, it's probably because you're a little bit behind. No, it's not a lunch break. Nothing. Don't worry about that, guys. I don't know why they're not showing us it, but hold on a second. Let's see here. Let's do a refresh. That's funny. Those communist bastards, eh? Okay, let's see what's live on CPAC. Okay. And I got this one loaded up too, so we'll see which feed starts first, guys. We got we're set up right here with the this is right off the Public Order Emergency Commission site. Okay, now we're flipped over to CPAC, and it says this event will begin shortly. So, I mean, I would have liked a little bit more transparency. Like, why are you closing down? So what was just about to happen is Bill Blair was going to table the inquiry in the House. Okay. So he was going to officially put it down on the table, let everyone know that it's been completed. Thank you, Justice Roleau, for your findings and doing all your hard work and what you have. And then, boom, right when that's done, it's going to switch over and we're going to have Justice Roleau address us and probably say, oh, guys, I just want you to know this was very hard. The Liberals did everything they wanted to. Not wanted to. They tried their hardest. Yada, yada, yada. Blah, blah, blah. Same bullshit. Different day. But yeah, if you guys can do anything, share this out right now because Canada's about to find out if there's, any type of justice for Canadians or what we got to do about this. This is the last chance, like I was thinking about it earlier this morning. I'm thinking, the politicians have failed the people. Okay. The police have failed the people. So this is the last thing we got here is, Rouleau's report. And, I know none of us have high hopes. None of us think anything's going to happen out of this. And I couldn't agree anymore. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that Brenda Lucky's going to take the fall for everything. And they're going to say, this was a policing matter. And, she's taking the high road and she's going to retire now and blah, 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 all that bullshit. That's what I'm assuming they're going to do. But we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, you know what else is kind of wild? I don't want to mess things up, but let me see if I can take you guys over so you can see this for yourself and you can make your own opinion. Like, do we live in a free country? Hold on here. We're not going to lose these windows, so don't worry. We got them both up, open, waiting. Who had this up? I think Real Andy Lee had it up. Let's go over see Real Andy Lee. She makes a very valid point. And what's this now? Oh no, that's an old one. Apology, I got all the kids home in the background, right? It's a okay, where are we at? Met with a lawyer this morning. He told me something that resonated with me. What he said, people think they have a justice system, but in fact, they have a legal system. Sometimes it's just, sometimes it's not. That's not what I'm looking for. I am looking for... anyways, what I was looking for is how... So at 9:00 this morning, accredited members of the liberal media are able to go in. Okay, they got a tablet in front of them, and they were able to read the report before any of us are able to. Right. So if you and when we say accredited journalist, I'm sure Rebel News wasn't welcome in there. I'm sure True North wasn't welcome in there. I'm sure Keenbacks and the Counter Signal weren't welcome in there. Andrew Lawton actually might have been allowed in there. I'm actually really curious to see because he was able to get accredited in Davos. So I don't see why he can't be accredited on right now. Ned, you guys are looking into it too. Thanks. Al Stern, what's up, brother? National Post feed is blocked as well. It's not you. Yeah, I know it's definitely not me because I'm not missing this for the world. I got CPAC. I got that website. I got the public order pulled up. And I got it on my phone waiting just to go off so we can tune right over to it right away as soon as it comes up. But yeah, so like, isn't it interesting that, all these people, can go in there and they can view what's happening. And you know why they can view what's happening? So whatever's about to be read, they've already done damage control. They've already written their article. All of these people, these teams, all the people that serve this corrupt, rotten, liberal regime have already been on the floor. They've already read the whole thing, and they're already writing up stories over there, and they're talking to their associates in their earpieces and all this shit. And they're just ready to come out and back them all. And, we seen what Jagmeet said yesterday when he came out and said, It's very clear. It's clear as day that they were trying to overthrow the government. You know, that really pissed me off when I heard him say that. But then I started to think, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe things actually aren't going to go so well for these people. Maybe that's why he's throwing a big distraction out there, you know, to try and grasp for strongs and you know, these crazy woke people to have one more thing to grab onto and you know, possess their brain. But you know, this is another thing that's not coming too good for them. This came out. CSIS documents reveal a Chinese strategy to influence the 2021 election. A lot of people called this out a long time ago, and you know, they were just dismissed as crazy conspiracy theorists. But Beijing had two goals: to seek return of minority liberal government and defeat conservatives perceived to be hawkish. Chinese officials in diaspora groups were used in disinformation campaigns against conservatives. So people who obviously want our country to be like China were running disinformation campaigns against conservatives. And Patton is right. That is why we must get the DILF party in Canada. Undeclared cash donations amongst tactics employed to support preferred political candidates. And I wish I could read this part to you guys, but holy shit, how is anyone supposed to be able to see that? Let's be real. Did you guys see Rachel Gilmore's nice award last night that she got? Let's go check it out. It says, where we at? Where we at, Rachel? Where we at? Speak of the devil, look at this. Rachel, where did your reward go? Don't tell me you deleted your tweet. Ah, there we are. The 2023 Tara Singh Hayer Memorial Awards is presented to Saba Itizaz, who is some crazy leftist lunatic who is absolutely insane. What's up, little buddy? You want some fruit snacks? Want to come say hi? Just go like that. Hi. Here you go, buddy. I'll be done shortly, okay? Love you. Have faced an onslaught of abuse. Their courage to continue to speak about this, even with what they are enduring, says a lot. Huge congrats to these amazing women. Look at these amazing women. Look at them holding their rewards. Where's Rachel Gilmore? Like, I got an honest question. Was Rachel Gilmore in this picture for the photo op, for the award she ate, or she won, and you know, Saba and Erica ate her? Did they cook her up and eat her? Because I do not see Rachel here. I see some people who look like they're full, and I know these wacko woke people do some silly ass shit. So I don't know, man. I think they might have ate Rachel Gilmore. I really do. Chris Burke, Rachel is old news. Move on from her. I know, buddy. I shouldn't be giving her the platform or the time of day. But that one just made me laugh last night, and I had to crack a joke on it. I'm like, you know, because clearly she's on vacation or out of town, or I don't know where she is. But, oh, here we go. We're getting ready. All right. The good stuff. Isn't that funny that the CPAC feed is on before the official Public Order Emergency Commission feed? Things that make you go, all right. I don't want to mess this up, guys, so I'm just going to leave that there, and we're going to wait, and I'm not going to, you know, mess around and do other things and mess this up. Look at this room, though. You can tell that this man's ready to just sit here and lie to all of Canada. The moment you've all been waiting for. All right, guys, I'll be back in a minute. I'll leave this all tuned up here, and we're all good. I just want to make sure my kids are situated because I don't want to miss this. CBC is probably like, yo, Rulo, can you just, make them wait a bit? 20 minutes or so, we need a little bit more time to write this story, to frame it the perfect way for your guys.
Can I ask the reporters who were live to please cease their broadcast? Okay, Commissioner Paul Rouleau will make a brief statement. He will not take questions at the end of his statement. Honorable Paul Rouleau, le commissaire de la commission.
The Honorable Paul Rouleau, Commissioner of the Public Order Emergency Commission.
At the National Archives of Canada, just steps away from where many of the events that led to this inquiry took place. La Commission sur l'état d'urgence.
The Public Order Emergency Commission was established on April 25th, 2022, as a result of the Government of Canada's decision to invoke the Emergencies Act in response to protests in Ottawa and elsewhere in Canada in January and February of 2022. The Commission was directed to examine and report on the circumstances that led to the declaration of a public order emergency and the measures taken by the government for dealing with the emergency. The Commission was also tasked with examining to the extent relevant to the circumstances of the declaration of emergency and the measures taken the following questions: the evolution and goals of the convoy and blockades, their leadership, organization, and participants, the impact of domestic and foreign funding, including crowdsourcing platforms, the impact, role, and sources of misinformation and disinformation, including the use of social media, the impact of the blockades, including their economic impact, and the efforts of police and other responders prior to and after the declaration. This was a monumental task for the Commission, particularly in light of the fact that this report had to be completed in less than 300 days. Thanks to the hard work and dedication of too many people to name. I'm proud to say that we have carried out the important task assigned to us by Parliament. We've produced a thorough and comprehensive report, and we have met the deadline set by the statute.
Dedication of too many people to name, I'm proud to say that we have carried out the important task assigned to us by Parliament, produced a thorough and comprehensive report, and met the deadline set by statute. On previous occasions, I've said that this Commission's task is first and foremost to be a tool of accountability and to foster public confidence. The invocation of the Emergencies Act was a significant event. Members of the public have a right to know what the government did and why they did it. The Commission has already contributed to the public's right to know through its public hearings. For over 30 days in October, November, and December 2022, the Commission heard from 76 witnesses and 50 experts. Many senior government officials were examined, both by Commission counsel and by counsel for the 22 parties to whom the Commission granted standing to participate in the hearings. The witnesses who testified included organizers of the convoy, citizens affected by the protests, police, public servants, and elected officials at the municipal and federal levels. Even the Prime Minister testified, providing his own account of the events in question. There was also unprecedented access to documents produced by dozens of different entities, including the federal government. Commission counsel were security cleared and able to review documents that were otherwise classified or protected by national security or other public interest privilege. For only the fourth time in Canadian history, cabinet confidence was waived over records containing the inputs that were before cabinet when it deliberated over the use of the Emergencies Act. Approximately 28,000 documents were disclosed to the parties who participated in the hearings, and approximately 9,000 of those were introduced into evidence. Les audiences ont permis un examen.
The proceedings became a rare public examination of decision-making by the federal and other governments and government agencies. Thousands of people watched the proceedings, read the transcripts, and examined the exhibits. From these proceedings, the public has already been exposed to an immense amount of information. Individuals have been able to form their own views about the events of early 2022. Today, with the publication of my report, the Commission contributes to public accountability in a second way by setting out my findings, conclusions, and recommendations following the events in question. My report contains over 2,000 pages spread across 5 volumes. It consists of an executive summary, 2 volumes of analysis, a detailed record of the Commission's activities, a report summarizing the over 8,800 submissions received in our public consultation process, and a collection of expert policy papers produced for the Commission.
In the report, I chronicle the origins of the Freedom Convoy. I conclude that it was not an organization with clear leadership. Rather, it was a movement comprised of people who shared certain social, economic, and political grievances, but also had countless individual views. Many of the protesters' concerns long predated COVID-19 pandemic. They were rooted in feelings of loss of place within Canadian society, alienation, economic anxieties, and loss of faith in government. That said, the pandemic and responding public health measures were an important motivator that caused the Freedom Convoy to mobilize. Some will want my report to make findings or conclusions about COVID itself, or the correctness of how government responded to it. Those people may be disappointed. The mandate is not about the pandemic or public health policy. Those are important topics, but not ones with which I have been tasked. I do, however, make 2 observations. First, the COVID-19 pandemic was perhaps a once-in-a-generation crisis. Governments, federal, provincial, municipal, responded in good faith to circumstances as they understood them. Second, however one views those responses, they imposed real hardships on thousands of Canadians. Les gens ont non seulement perdu des membres de leur famille et des amis.
People did not only lose family and friends to the disease. Some also lost jobs, businesses, homes, and savings. Many more, such as healthcare workers, labored under extremely difficult circumstances. Truckers were another group that felt a heavy weight from the pandemic, sometimes made more difficult by health measures put in place by governments. When new rules that limited the ability of unvaccinated truckers to cross the Canada-US border were announced, this served as a rallying point for those who disagreed with government policy. These individuals organized, mobilized, and became what would come to be known as the Freedom Convoy movement.
One of the most cherished rights enjoyed by Canadians is the right to engage in political protest. The ability of individuals and groups to publicly voice their dissent enriches and empowers our democracy. It's hardly surprising that government health measures would cause some form of protest in response, given their impact on people's lives. What was surprising was the size and scale of these protests and the way in which they proliferated across the country. The majority of those who participated in the protests were animated by a genuine desire to engage in peaceful demonstrations so that their voices would be heard by leaders in government. They wished to exercise their fundamental right to express their political views, and they had a right to do so. However, like any large group, there were a diversity of views and intentions among the participants of the Freedom Convoy. Amongst the many who intended to protest peacefully were others who had more sinister goals or who were willing to engage in dangerous conduct to achieve their desired ends. For reasons that I discuss in my report, what began as a massive protest evolved into something entirely unprecedented, an occupation of the core of the nation's capital. En janvier et en février 2022,
the events of January and February 2022 were not limited to Ottawa. As I describe in my report, protests were occurring across the country in places such as Coutts, Alberta, Emerson, Manitoba, and Windsor, Ontario. These protests were also diverse. They ranged from peaceful marches to blockades of critical infrastructure. The size and scope of these protests was truly unprecedented. Police and governments alike struggled to respond. Ultimately, the federal government's response was to declare a public order emergency.
Is what role I should play in assessing Cabinet's decision to invoke the Emergencies Act? There's no precedent that helps to answer that question. Some parties have argued that I should not opine on the appropriateness of the decision and whether government met the statutory requirement to declare the public emergency order was not within my mandate. They note quite properly that determining the legality of the government's actions is the role of the courts of law. Others, however, have argued that pronouncing on the decision is the raison d'être, the very reason for this commission. In my view, the role and focus of a commission of inquiry into the use of the Emergencies Act will depend, to a certain extent, on the context in which the act is invoked. In some instances, it may be beyond doubt that the conditions for invoking the act were met. But there may be other questions that require careful review. In the present situation, however, I'm faced with a statute that has never been used or judicially interpreted. Serious questions have been raised as to whether the legal threshold to use the Act have been met. My assessment of the circumstances surrounding the invocation of the Act, therefore, inevitably involved a consideration of the Act's requirements. While nothing in my report is in any sense binding on the courts that may hear legal challenges to the use of the Act, I have decided to set out my own views on the invocation of the Act and the measures taken under it. After careful reflection, I have concluded that the very high threshold required for the invocation of the Act was met. In particular, for reasons that I discuss in detail in the report, I have concluded that when the decision was made to invoke the Act on February 14th, 2022, Cabinet had reasonable grounds to believe that there existed a national emergency arising from threats to the security of Canada that necessitated the taking of special temporary measures. I do not come to this conclusion easily, as I do not consider the factual basis for it to be overwhelming. Reasonable and informed people could reach a different conclusion than the one I have arrived at. Après mûre réflexion, je suis arrivé à la conclusion.
After careful reflection, I have concluded that the very high threshold required for the invocation of the Act was met. In particular, for reasons that I discuss in detail in the report, I've concluded that when the decision was made to invoke the Act on February 14th, 2022, Cabinet had reasonable grounds to believe that there existed a national emergency arising from threats to the security of Canada that necessitated the taking of special temporary measures. I do not come to this conclusion easily, as I do not consider the factual basis for it to be overwhelming. Reasonable and informed people could reach a different conclusion than the one I've arrived at. I also reached this conclusion reluctantly. The state should generally be able to respond to circumstances of urgency without the use of emergency powers. It is only in truly rare instances, when the state reasonably believes that it cannot otherwise fulfill its fundamental obligation to ensure the safety and security of people and property, that resort to emergency measures will be appropriate. In other words, the Emergencies Act is not a tool of convenience, but rather it is a tool of last resort.
The fact that circumstances evolved to the point where Cabinet reasonably considered it necessary to invoke the Act is regrettable, because in my view, the situation that led to its use could likely have been avoided. As I have explained in my report, the response to the Freedom Convoy included a series of policing failures, though I have also identified sound practices employed by some police services in their response to relevant events. Some of the missteps may have been small, but others were significant. Taken together, they contributed to a situation that spun out of control. The failures were not only in policing. Preparing for and responding to situations of threat and urgency in a federal system requires governments at all levels and those who lead them to rise above politics and collaborate for the common good. In January and February 2022, this did not always happen. Had police forces and governments better anticipated and prepared for the extent of political and social discontent exacerbated by COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in the environment of misinformation and disinformation so prevalent today, and had they collaborated more effectively, there could have been a different response to this unprecedented situation. It's likely that such preparation could have avoided the necessity of invoking the Emergencies Act. En plus de tirer des conclusions sur l'invocation de la loi.
In addition to making findings on the invocation of the Act itself, I've also reached conclusions on the appropriateness and effectiveness of the measures taken under it. While I have ultimately concluded that the federal government was justified in invoking the Act, I reach a more qualified conclusion with respect to the measures that the government adopted. I determined that the measures taken by the federal government were, for the most part, appropriate and effective, and contributed to bringing a return to order without loss of life or serious injury to people or property. I also found, however, that in a number of respects, these measures were deficient. These included important aspects of the Emergency Economic Measures Order, such as the absence of any discretion related to freezing assets, and the failure to provide a clear way for individuals to have their assets unfrozen when they were no longer engaged in illegal conduct.
I determined that the measures taken by the federal government were, for the most part, appropriate and effective and contributed to bringing a return to order without loss of life or serious injury to people or property. I also found, however, that in a number of respects, these measures were deficient. These included important aspects of the Emergency Economic Measures Order, such as the absence of any discretion related to the freezing of accounts or assets, and the failure to provide a clear way for individuals to have their assets unfrozen once they were no longer engaged in illegal conduct. I
also discuss aspects of the emergency measures regulations that cause me concern, including the vagueness of its provisions related to securing of places and its potential impact on freedom of the press. Drawing on lessons learned through this inquiry, my report concludes with a set of 56 recommendations. My recommendations relate to 6 broad areas: policing, federal intelligence collection and coordination, critical trade corridors and infrastructure, reforms to the Emergencies Act, other areas for further study, and follow-up and accountability following the release of my report.
Lessons learned through this inquiry, my report concludes with a set of 56 recommendations. My recommendations relate to 6 broad areas: policing, federal intelligence collection and coordination, critical trade corridors and infrastructure, reforms to the Emergencies Act, other areas for further study, and follow-up and accountability following the release of my report. I hope that these recommendations will go some way to addressing the various issues and deficiencies of a systemic nature that I identify in my report. Before ending these remarks, I would like to make a few comments about the Emergencies Act itself. I have already commented that it is regrettable that the situation across Canada deteriorated to the point where Cabinet reasonably believed that the use of the Act was necessary. We can all hope that such an exceptional confluence of events and circumstances does not occur again. However, even if it does, and if once again the very high threshold for declaring an emergency is met, members of the public should recognize that the Act contains significant safeguards. Although the Emergencies Act is often referred to as a replacement for the War Measures Act, it is in fact a very different statute. The Emergencies Act was designed to respond to a much broader range of emergencies.
Here he is making
it was also intentionally designed to provide extensive checks,
letting you
balances,
know it's
and
for
limits
you, it's for the people.
to
We're
guard
just going to
against
invoke this
abuse.
whenever the fuck we
Il
want.
existe en effet des restrictions notables quant au type
There
de
are
mesures
significant
que le
limits
gouvernement
on the
peut prendre
kinds
en cas
of
de crise.
measures that the government can
Il est
take during
possible
an
de
emergency.
contester devant les tribunaux le recours à la loi
The law
et les
permits
mesures
legal
adoptées en
challenges to
vertu de
use
celle-ci,
of the Act, and the
qui
measures
doivent être
adopted
conformes
under it must
à la
remain
Charte
compliant
des
with the
droits
Canadian
et
Charter
Charte
of
canadienne
Rights
des droits et
and
libertés.
Freedoms.
Le Parlement
Parliament is
dispose
given
de pouvoirs
extensive
étendus pour
powers of
examiner et
review and
contrôler
control over the
le recours
executive's
à la loi
use
par
of the
l'exécutif.
Act.
Ainsi, bien que le
Although
cabinet
Cabinet
puisse
can
déclarer
unilaterally
unilatéralement
declare an
l'état
emergency,
d'urgence, le Parlement peut
Parliament can
reporter
revoke the
cette
declaration
déclaration
at any
à tout
time.
moment. Et bien sûr, la
And of
création de
course,
commissions
a
comme
commission
celle-ci
such as this one
est
is
obligatoire.
mandatory,
Si les futures commissions sont
provided
comme
that
celle-ci,
future commissions
créées en
are,
vertu
like
de la
this
loi
one was,
sur les
created
enquêtes
pursuant to the
et
Inquiries Act,
si les
and
responsables peuvent
given
consulter les
access to
documents
the
et les
necessary
renseignements
documents and
nécessaires, elles
information,
garantiront que la conduite du
they will
gouvernement
ensure that the government's
fera
conduct will be
l'objet d'un
subject
examen
to meaningful,
indépendant
independent
valable.
scrutiny.
Il importe de
It is
souligner que les
notable
mesures de
that the
protection que
protections
la
that
loi
the
sur les
Emergencies
mesures
Act
d'urgence
contains
prévoit
far
sont largement
exceed
plus
those of
étendues
any
que
provincial
celles
or
que prévoient les
territorial
lois sur les
emergencies
mesures d'urgence des
statutes in
provinces
Canada,
et territoires au Canada et même des pays
and even
à travers le monde.
in other countries
Bien que je
across the
recommande
world.
diverses mesures de réforme
While I have
pour que
made
la loi sur les
recommendations for
mesures
various
d'urgence
reforms to
corresponde
bring
à
the
la
Emergencies
réalité du
Act
21e
into the
siècle,
21st century
pour garantir
to ensure the
l'efficacité
effectiveness
des
of
futures
future
enquêtes et pour
inquiries
renforcer la
and
reddition de comptes de la part
to
du
strengthen
gouvernement,
government
je demeure
accountability, I am
d'avis
also
que la loi
convinced that
prévoit
there is
déjà de
much in the
nombreuses
Act
mesures dignes de mention
that is
à ces
commendable.
égards. De fait, lorsque le Parlement
The
a
Parliament
adopté
that
la loi
passed the
sur les mesures
Emergencies
d'urgence
Act in
en
1988
il a
went to
déployé
great
énormément
lengths
d'efforts
to
pour
ensure
que son
that its use would be
invocation
subject
exige de rendre
to
des comptes
robust
de façon
accountability
rigoureuse
and
fasse l'objet
public
d'un examen
scrutiny.
public. J'espère donc
I
que
hope
la
that this
présente
inquiry
enquête et
and
mon
my
rapport
report have
contribuent à
contributed to
l'atteinte de cet
achieving this.
objectif. The Parliament that passed the Emergencies Act in 1988 went to great lengths to ensure that its use would be subject to robust accountability and public scrutiny. I hope that this inquiry and my report have contributed to achieving this. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Enjoy the report.
Oh man. Oh, there I am. I thought I got booted for saying fuck this guy. How's everyone feel about that? There I am. That's fantastic, eh? Let's see what the comments got here. I didn't really get a chance to check any of them out because yeah, let's see. Enjoy the report. Yeah, exactly, right? Unreal. dick. Yeah, you're way nicer than I am. I got quite a few names to call that man right now, but I think I'm not going to say them on camera. Next time it won't be so peaceful. Well, I was already feeling defeated today, so that just adds to it. You know what? Don't let that add to it. Don't let that add to it because, everything that's happening is shit. It's terrible. Clearly, the police aren't doing what the police are supposed to do. Politicians aren't. No one is. So, you know what happens when people don't follow the law and people don't follow orders and people don't do their job? People stop acting the way they're supposed to act in a society. So unfortunately, we'll probably start fucking seeing some of that. But let's hope not. I know there's an entire convoy in Winnipeg right now that I'm sure is going to be fucking thrilled to hear the findings of this. Yeah, pretty pathetic, guys. I mean, let's be serious. Let's be real here. I mean, did we really expect anything else? We all had high hopes. We all wanted to hope that our country, hasn't gotten this bad, but we let it get this bad. And that's a fact. And, it is what it is, man. I'm honestly not even fazed because the bad people, they always lose in the end. It would be nice if this ended a lot sooner than, it doesn't need to go on as long as it does. And for all you people on here who support Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, well, you ask them if they support the trucker convoy now that the Liberal government, who's been put in place by the Chinese, have used their own policing procedure and determined that it's illegal. You get what I'm saying? I don't know. I guess I'm just going to say, fuck you, make me. Have a good Friday, guys.